Pennsylvania, USA, October 2025. It had been raining for 3 days straight. The sky was covered with dark clouds and the cold wind was shaking the tree branches as if someone was hiding among them. 29-year-old journalist Ryan Walker was working late into the night in his office. Most of the employees had left. The entire floor was almost empty. Only the soft sounds of computers and the patter of raindrops could be heard. Ryan was known across America for investigating mysterious events and disappearances. But he had no idea that something would change his life that night that was not just related to a crime or a secret, but to a being who was probably not even human. At around 11:30 at night, a call came from the office's security desk. "Ryan, there's a package for you." At that time, yes, and the strange thing is, the sender's name wasn't written on it. Ryan went downstairs. On the desk was an old, damp brown box. It had only one thing written on it. For Ryan Walker. That's it. No address. No sender's name. No explanation. Ryan picked up the box and brought it into his office. He didn't know why, but he felt strangely uneasy. He cut the tape with a knife. He opened the box. Inside was just a folder. A black folder, on which, in white letters, was written, File 13. Ryan's forehead creased. He opened the folder. Inside were a few old photos, some handwritten reports, and a yellowed piece of paper. His heart stopped beating as he saw the first photo. A man was standing in the photo, about 40 years old, wearing a black coat. He had a strange smile on his face. But what was most frightening were his eyes. It seemed as if he was looking straight at Ryan from inside the picture. On the back of the picture was a name, Samuel Reed, and below, patient number 13. Ryan began to read the rest of the documents. All the papers were related to Oakwood Asylum, an old mental hospital that had closed about 30 years ago. According to the file, Samuel Reed had been brought to the hospital in 1927. But the strange thing about him was that his illness was not listed anywhere. Every report was incomplete. Every page was torn in one place or another. And almost every doctor wrote the same sentence at the end of their report. He should not be left alone. Ryan picked up another page. There were only a few words on it. He is not a patient. Beneath it, someone had written in a quick pen, "If this file has reached you, it means he has woken up again." Ryan burst out laughing. Someone made a good joke. But the unease in his heart did not go away. It was almost 1 o'clock when he got home that night. The rain had intensified. As soon as he entered the apartment, he closed the door and went straight to the kitchen. He made coffee and sat down to read the file again. The more he read the file, the more strange it felt. Several pages of the file were missing, but the ones that remained were also disturbing. One report read, "The patient disappears from his cell at night, but is back in it in the morning." Second report, "The cameras can't record it." Third report, "He called my name today, even though I hadn't introduced myself." Then a final report, "I can't do this anymore. He comes to me in my dreams." Ryan closed the file. The room suddenly felt very quiet. An unusual silence. Then, it felt like someone had knocked lightly on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Ryan was startled. It was 2 in the morning. Who could it be at this time? He went to the door. He looked out the peephole. There was no one. An empty hallway. He opened the door. There was no one outside either. But there was one thing lying on the floor. An old black and white photo. Ryan picked up the photo. And the next moment his color faded. It was a picture of his apartment. But the picture looked very old. And inside the window, someone was standing. A long black shadow. Who was looking straight at the camera. Ryan immediately went out. The corridor was empty. The elevator was closed. The stairs were deserted. No one was in sight. He closed the door and came back into the room. But now his hands were shaking. For the first time, he felt that maybe this wasn't a joke. He fell asleep before dawn, but his sleep was not restful. He had a dream. He was standing in a long, dark corridor. The walls were full of moisture. Water was dripping from the ceiling. A door could be seen in the distance. There was only a number written on the door. 13. A person was standing at the end of the corridor, wearing a black coat. His face is not visible, but he slowly raises his head and smiles. Suddenly his eyes start to glow with white light, and he whispers, "You have been looking for me for a long time." Ryan woke up with a jolt. His breath was heavy. The room was dark. The clock showed 4:13 in the morning, and then he looked at his bedroom door. It was half open, although he had closed it completely before going to bed. Behind the door was darkness, deep darkness, and it felt as if someone was standing there and silently watching him. At that moment, a message from an unknown number came to his phone. Ryan picked up the phone with trembling hands. The message consisted of only one line. "Don't go to Oakwood Asylum. He's already seen you." It was 7 in the morning. Ryan Walker had been up all night. The message from an unknown number kept echoing in his mind. "Don't go to Oakwood Asylum. He's already seen you." Normally, Ryan would have dismissed such messages as a joke. But this time, something was different. He didn't know why, but it felt like someone was really watching him. He peered out of his apartment window. People were walking down the street as usual. Cars were passing by. Everything seemed normal. But then his eyes fell on a man standing on the other side of the street. Black coat, tall, and a stooped face. The man was standing on the side of the street, looking straight at Ryan's window. Ryan was silent for a few moments. Then, he quickly turned to go downstairs. But when he left the building a few minutes later, the man had disappeared, as if he had never been there. By noon, Ryan had made up his mind. He would definitely go to Oakwood Asylum. Whatever the secret behind this file was, he had to know it. After a drive of about 3 hours, he arrived in a remote area of Pennsylvania, in the middle of the forest, where even the mobile signal was barely reaching. In the distance, he saw an old building. Oakwood Asylum. The building stood silent, like a dead giant. Broken windows, rusty gates, and vines growing on the walls, as if nature was slowly swallowing it. Ryan parked the car and picked up the camera and went inside. As soon as he crossed the gate, he had a strange feeling. It was as if dozens of eyes were watching him, but no one was around. There was only air and silence, a very deep silence. As soon as he entered the building, the strong smell of decay hit his nose. The old paint had peeled off the walls. There were shards of glass scattered on the floor, and the long corridors were disappearing into the darkness. Ryan turned on the flashlight and headed towards the reception hall. There he found a rusty map, a complete map of the asylum. A large red cross was made on one section, and it read, "East Wing." Someone had written a sentence by hand below, "Never open again." Ryan's forehead furrowed. This was the section that had been mentioned repeatedly in the file. He followed the map to the East Wing. On the way, he began to see strange things. Nail marks on the walls, stains like old blood, and the same number everywhere. 13. Sometimes on the wall, sometimes on the door, sometimes on the floor, as if someone had written the same number all over the hospital. Finally, he reached the East Wing. The path was blocked by bricks, as if someone had deliberately sealed it. But there was a hole in one part of the wall, big enough for a man to fit through. Ryan put his flashlight in. All he could see was darkness. Deep, unnatural darkness. He dared, and he went through the hole. As soon as he reached the other side, the air suddenly became cold. So cold that his breath began to steam. He turned the flashlight. A long corridor lay ahead, and rows of doors on both sides. The doors had numbers written on them. 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13. Door number 13. Ryan's heart beat fast. File 13, patient 13, and now room 13. He slowly approached the door. The door was rusty, but there was something strange. There was dust all over the corridor, but not on this door, as if someone was touching it again and again. At that moment, knock. Ryan was startled. The sound came from inside the door. Then again, knock, 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 as if someone was knocking from inside. Ryan's throat went dry. He put his ear to the door, and what he heard, it made his blood run cold. Inside, dozens of voices were whispering. Men, children, all together. Don't open. "Don't open. Don't open." The whispering suddenly stopped. There was silence for a few seconds. Then a terrifying scream echoed throughout the corridor, so painful that Ryan's ears began to ring. He immediately backed away. He shone a light on the wall. There was something written there. When he wiped the dust away, the words became visible. He wasn't sick. Ryan's heart started pounding. He shone a light down below. Another sentence was written. "We didn't imprison him." And below that, "We were preventing him from coming out." Suddenly, his flashlight went out for a moment. The entire corridor was plunged into darkness. Ryan panicked and flicked his flashlight. A few seconds later, the light came back on, and then his heart almost stopped. Someone was standing at the other end of the corridor. A tall shadow, human-like, but unusually tall. His arms reached below his knees, and he stood perfectly still, looking at Ryan. Ryan shone the flashlight directly at it. The shadow disappeared, as if it had never been there. "This is my illusion," he said to himself. But even his own voice sounded false to him. Then suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. "See-churrar, see-churrar, see-churrar." Something was walking down the corridor, slowly, and it was moving towards him. Ryan turned around immediately, but there was no one there. When he looked at door number 13 again, his breath caught. The door was slowly opening on its own. See-churrar, see-churrar. It was completely dark inside. Such darkness that even the light of the flashlight was getting lost in it. And then, a voice came from inside. Faint, soft, and very familiar. Ryan. His body went still. He recognized the voice. It was the voice of his sister Emily, who had died 10 years ago. "Ryan." The voice came again. "Help me." Ryan's hands began to tremble. It was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Then two white eyes lit up in the darkness. Still, motionless, and looking straight at Ryan. And beneath those same eyes, a smile slowly began to emerge. A smile that could not have belonged to a human. The silence of corridor 13 had become unbearable now. Ryan stood in front of the door. His hands were shaking, and those two white eyes inside the door were constantly watching him. Time seemed to have stopped. Then suddenly, in the blink of an eye, those eyes disappeared. Complete darkness, as if nothing had ever been there. Ryan gathered his courage. The journalist inside him was fighting fear. If he had gone back now, he would probably always wonder what was behind the door. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. As soon as he entered the room, he smelled a strange odor. Rot, damp, and the smell of something old rotting. The flashlight's light moved around the room. The walls were bare. Dust was caked on the floor. And in the middle of the room was an old iron bed, which was covered with rust. At first glance, the room seemed ordinary. But then Ryan's eyes went to the wall. There were hundreds of words written with nails, so many that the entire wall was covered. The same sentence was repeated over and over. "He comes in dreams. He comes in dreams. He comes in dreams." A cold wave ran through Ryan's body. At that moment, the light of his flashlight fell on the floor. There was a small door there, iron, inside the floor, like a passage to a basement. There was a heavy chain on the door, but the chain was broken, as if someone had forced it from the inside and broken it. Ryan slowly approached. He opened the iron door. Chur, the dark stairs were going down, very low, so low that even the flashlight's light couldn't reach the end. Ryan hesitated for a moment. Then he started to descend the stairs. The cold was getting colder with each step, and the silence was getting heavier. 5 minutes later, he reached the bottom. And what he saw, it made his hair stand on end. Below was a huge underground hall. In the middle of the hall were dozens of iron cages. Some were broken, some were closed, and on top of each cage was a number written. 1, 2, 3, 4, 13. All the cages were empty, except for one. Cage number 13, located in the far corner of the hall, was closed. Someone was sitting inside it, with his head bowed, motionless. Ryan's hands were soaked with sweat. He slowly turned the flashlight in that direction. The person didn't move. "Who are you?" Ryan's voice echoed. There was no answer. "Samuel?" he asked again. There was silence for a few seconds. Then, the person slowly started to raise his head. Ryan's heart almost stopped, because the person sitting inside the cage was not Samuel Reed. It was Ryan himself. It was exactly the same face, the same eyes, the same clothes, even the old wound on his hand. Ryan took a few steps back. "No," barely came out of his mouth. The Ryan inside the cage smiled, slowly, in a very strange way. Then he said a sentence. "You shouldn't have come here." Ryan's mind went blank. Suddenly, the entire hall began to shake, as if something huge was moving underground. Something was moving in the darkness behind the cages. Ryan turned the flashlight in that direction, and at that moment he screamed. In the darkness, dozens of human faces were trapped inside the wall, as if someone had pressed living people into the wall. They were all moving, breathing, and silently looking at Ryan. Suddenly, all the faces opened their mouths at once and said the same sentence. "He's awake. He's awake. He's awake." At that moment, heavy footsteps were heard from the other end of the hall. Theik, Theik, Theik. It seemed as if a huge being was walking in the darkness. The ground shook with every step. Then two white eyes lit up in the darkness. The same eyes. The ones Ryan had seen inside door number 13. But now, looking at them, he could tell how high they were. About 10 feet. That thing wasn't human. It was something else. Something that the human mind wasn't designed to see. Then the creature in the darkness began to speak for the first time. Its voice sounded like a combination of dozens of people's voices. Men, children, all together. And it said, "Ryan Walker, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Then all the lights in the hall came on at once, and Ryan saw the creature's full face for the first time. And in that moment he realized, there are some secrets that it's better for a man to die than to know. All the lights in the hall went on at once. For a few moments, Ryan's eyes widened. He blocked the light with his hand, and then his eyes locked on the creature. It was about 10 feet tall. Its body was human-like, but unnaturally thin. Its arms were so long that they touched the ground. Its skin was as gray as ash. And its face was made entirely of human faces. Dozens of faces. Some of men, some of women, some of children. And all the faces were moving slowly, as if alive. Sometimes an eye would open. Sometimes a lip would move. Sometimes a face would cry silently. Ryan's stomach started to churn. He had never seen such a terrifying sight in his life. The creature took a step forward. Theik. The ground shook. Then dozens of mouths on its face opened at once. And a voice came. "You wanted to know who I was?" Ryan couldn't answer. His whole body was numb. The creature spoke again. "I'm not Samuel Reed. Samuel was just a name. One of hundreds of names." Suddenly, the old screens on the walls of the hall lit up automatically. Black and white pictures began to play on them. 1927, 1938, 1951, 1964, 1978, 1993, 2007. Each picture contained a different person, but they all had the same eyes, and they all had the same smile on their faces. Ryan's heart sank. "Who are all these people?" The creature replied, "I." Then the pictures on all the screens started smiling at once. A cold wave ran through Ryan's body. This is impossible. Many things are impossible for you humans. Suddenly, a picture appeared on one of the screens, and Ryan's breath stopped. The picture was of his father. No. He came out of his mouth helplessly. His father had disappeared 10 years ago. No trace of him had ever been found. But now his picture was on the screen, and he was smiling. That terrible smile. Ryan ran towards the screen like a madman. "This is a lie. Where is my father?" The creature remained silent. Then the lips of an old man on his face moved, and a voice came. "We are here." At that moment, all the faces trapped inside the walls began to move, and Ryan recognized one face among them. It was his father. His eyes were wide with fear. He wanted to say something, but his mouth was completely pressed into the wall. Ryan's legs were exhausted. For God's sake, what is this? The creature slowly approached. Now there was only a few feet between him and Ryan. Its body smelled of decay and dampness. Then it said, "I am made of memories. I live in fear. And I devour identities." Ryan did not understand. The creature raised its long hand and pointed to the wall of the hall. All these people, still alive, but only their bodies are dead. Suddenly, all the faces inside the wall began to scream at once. Screams that made Ryan's ears hurt. And among these screams, a voice stood out. His father's voice. "Run, Ryan. It'll take you too." Suddenly, the entire hall shook. All the lights began to flicker, and the creature looked angry for the first time. The dozens of faces on its face began to scream at once. Silence. The next moment, Ryan's father's face was pulled into the wall and disappeared. Ryan screamed. Then suddenly, he felt someone's presence behind him. He immediately turned around, and his blood froze. A person was standing behind him. A black coat, white face, and an unnatural gleam in the eyes. It was Samuel Reed, the same person whose picture was in File 13. But the problem was, the creature was standing in front. So how was Samuel behind him? Samuel smiled slowly and whispered, "What you see in front of you, that's just its body. The real thing is still down there." Ryan's heart nearly stopped. "Down there?" Samuel pointed to the floor. And at that moment, the ground cracked. Way up, a large part of the floor broke and fell down. Below was only darkness. Endless darkness. And from the depths of that darkness, thousands of whispers were emerging. "Go back. Go back. Go back." Then something moved in the darkness. Huge. So big that only part of it was visible. And Ryan realized for the first time that the creature above wasn't the real threat. The real thing was still waking up below. The terrifying sound of the ground breaking still echoed in the hall. Ryan staggered back. A giant crack had opened in the floor in front of him. There was only darkness below. Such darkness that it seemed as if even light was afraid to enter it. Thousands of whispers were emerging from the depths. Sometimes men's voices, sometimes women's, sometimes children's, and sometimes words that did not seem to be part of any human language. Ryan lowered the flashlight with trembling hands. The light continued to fall for a few seconds. Then the darkness swallowed him. The floor was nowhere to be seen. "What is this place?" Ryan whispered. Samuel Reed, standing behind him, smiled. "This is not the foundation of Oakwood Asylum. This is his grave." Ryan turned to look at him. "Tomb." A strange glint appeared in Samuel's eyes. This hospital was not built for treatment. It was built over a door. Suddenly the lights in the entire hall went out. Complete darkness. Ryan's breathing quickened. Only one sound remained. Something was moving down, very slowly, very heavy. Thick, thick, thick. The ground shook with every step. It seemed as if a giant creature was walking deep down. Suddenly, an old emergency bulb lit up in the corner of the hall. The red light was making the whole atmosphere even more terrifying. And in that red light, Ryan saw an ancient drawing on the wall. That drawing was not made by a human. It showed a giant black creature. Hundreds of people were kneeling around him, and there was a strange mark on the creature's head, seeing which, Ryan's head ached severely. He felt as if someone was whispering inside his mind, "Remember me. Free me." Ryan fell to his knees. A thin line of blood began to flow from his ears. Samuel immediately approached him, and for the first time, fear appeared on his face. "Don't look at that mark." "Why?" "Because the more you look at it, the more it will be able to see you." Suddenly a scream emerged from deep within. A scream that could not have come from a human throat. The entire hall shook. The walls began to crack, and all the cages on the floor began to shake. Then something else happened. Cage number 1 opened automatically. "See-char-r-r-r." After that cage, number 2, then number 3, then number 4. Within a few seconds, all the cages had opened, and the darkness inside them slowly began to leave. Ryan looked in fear. They were shadows, human-shaped shadows, but they had no faces, just black space. And they were all looking in the same direction, down to the depths, as if waiting for something to wake up. Then all the shadows knelt down together and bowed their heads. Ryan's heart began to beat fast. "What are they doing?" Samuel replied. "Worship." "Whose?" Samuel fell silent. At that moment, 2 eyes lit up in the depths, very far down, far away, but so big that Ryan's whole body trembled. They weren't human eyes or animal eyes. They belonged to something that had been alive underground for centuries. Suddenly, images began to appear in Ryan's mind. Without warning, he found himself in an ancient forest. People gathered around a fire, and they were all worshipping a giant shadow. Then the scene changed. 1703. Some people were sealing a cave underground. They were screaming, crying, and repeating the same phrase over and over again. "Don't let him out." Then the scene changed. 1927. The construction of Oakwood Asylum was beginning, and Ryan saw a man. It was Samuel Reed. Exactly the same. Not even a day had passed. Suddenly, all the scenes disappeared. Ryan was back in the hall, but now his breath began to stop, because those 2 eyes in the depths had come closer than ever. Much closer. Although it was impossible for such a large creature to cover such a distance in a few seconds. Then for the first time the thing spoke. Not a voice, but a feeling. A whisper that echoed directly in Ryan's mind. "Finally, you have come." Ryan's knees answered. "Who are you?" There was silence for a few moments. Then the answer came. "I am the one your ancestors buried. And you are the one who will free me." Suddenly, the entire hall began to shake like an earthquake. The walls began to crumble. Stones began to fall from the ceiling. And those giant eyes deep within slowly began to rise, as if something was finally coming out of its confinement. At that moment, Samuel grabbed Ryan's arm. For the first time, there was real fear on his face. And he shouted, "Run! We're too late! Run!" Samuel's scream was still echoing in the air when a large part of the hall's ceiling collapsed in an explosion. Bang! Stones scattered everywhere. Ryan and Samuel barely jumped to one side. Those giant eyes deep within were now clearer than ever, and were coming up with every passing moment. Samuel grabbed Ryan's arm. "Come with me." The 2 of them ran to a corner of the hall, where there was a secret tunnel. The tunnel was so narrow that only one person could pass through at a time. The ground behind them was constantly shaking, and the whispers coming from deep inside had become stronger than ever. "Ryan, come back. Free me." Ryan covered both ears, but the sound was still audible, as if he were inside his mind. After running for several minutes, they arrived at an old room. This room was different from the rest of the asylum. It was small. There were strange markings on the walls, and in the middle was a large table, on which were dozens of old diaries. Samuel picked up a diary and threw it in front of Ryan. "Read this." Ryan opened the diary. His heart almost stopped when he saw the first page, because the name of the diary writer was Jonathan Walker. That was his great-grandfather's name. Ryan's breath caught. This is impossible. Samuel stood still. Ryan began to quickly turn the pages. First entry, June 17th, 1927. Today we have closed the door again, but we know it will not be forever. Next page, August 2nd, 1927. He saw me in a dream. He called my name. Now he knows who I am. Next page, October 10th, 1927. If this diary reaches any of the Walker family, know that one day he will come for you. Ryan's hands began to tremble. What is all this? Samuel replied slowly. Your family was among those who imprisoned him. Ryan looked at him in surprise. 100 years ago, when people worshipped this thing as a god. Your great-grandfather was among the few who imprisoned it underground. And now, Samuel took a deep breath. Now he wants to be free. And for that, he needs you. At that moment, all the candles in the room went out at once. Complete darkness. Ryan's heart started beating fast. Then, a sound of someone breathing came from a corner of the room. Ha, ha, ha. They both immediately turned in that direction. The flashlight's light went into the corner, and Ryan's blood froze. A man was standing there, his father, Abu. Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes. His father had been missing for 10 years. Abu. He moved towards them, but Samuel immediately caught him. Stop. It's my father.
No.
Samuel's voice was shaking. It's not them. Suddenly, the man smiled. An inhuman smile. Then his neck slowly began to twist. 90 degrees. 120 degrees. 180 degrees. And still he didn't stop. Ryan backed away in fear. The man's skin began to peel off, and dozens of other faces began to appear from inside.
Men.
Women. Children. The same faces that Ryan had seen trapped in the walls. Suddenly, all the faces opened their eyes at once and said the same sentence. He's coming.
Bang.
The wall of the room cracked, and on the other side there was only darkness. Deep, living darkness. In that darkness, two giant eyes lit up, closer than ever. Ryan's mind began to ache violently. He felt as if someone was pulling at his memories. He remembered his school. Then that memory became blurry. He remembered his mother's face. Then he began to fade away too. What is happening? He screamed. Samuel grabbed his shoulders. It's eating your memories. If it took all your memories, then you'll live. But you'll never remember who you were. At that moment, Ryan had another terrible feeling. He was trying to remember his sister Emily's face, but he couldn't remember her. He knew the name, but not the face. And that was the beginning. The entity in the darkness began to laugh slowly. A laugh that humans were not made to hear. Then he said his name for the first time, and Samuel's face turned pale at the sound of that name. I am Morgath. And the door is open. Morgath's name echoed throughout the room. I am Morgath. It wasn't just a voice. It was a feeling, a venomous whisper that was penetrating straight into the mind. Ryan fell to his knees, holding his head in both hands. He felt as if someone was pulling out the memories inside his mind one by one. He remembered his school, but he didn't remember his name. He remembered his mother, but her face was blurred. He remembered his sister Emily, but now he was even starting to forget her voice. No. Tears welled up in his eyes. No, it can't be. Morgath's laughter echoed in the darkness. Your existence is made up of only your memories, and I'm emptying you. At that moment, Samuel grabbed Ryan's shoulders. Listen to me. I'm trying. No, pay close attention. Samuel took an old metal locket from his pocket. There was a strange mark on the locket, the same mark Ryan had seen on the wall before, but now it didn't give him a headache. Instead, an image suddenly appeared in his mind. An ancient cave, torches of fire, and a few people were closing a door. One of them was his great-grandfather, Jonathan Walker.
Then the scene changed.
Jonathan was talking to someone else, and when the man lifted his face, Ryan's breath caught. It was Samuel Reed, exactly the same, not old, unchanged. Suddenly the scene ended. Ryan was back in the room. How is that possible? Samuel fell silent. After a few moments, he said softly, "Because I'm not human." Ryan looked at him in surprise. What? I came through that door too, but I'm not Morgath. I was one of the things that came with him. Ryan's heart pounded. Then why did you help us? A strange sadness came into Samuel's eyes. Because for the first time, I learned something other than fear, living among humans. And one day I realized, Morgath doesn't just want to take over the world. He wants to erase all memories. Suddenly the ground began to shake. This time, more violently than before. Bang! A part of the roof collapsed, and the wall collapsed completely. Behind it was nothing but darkness. Now Morgath's real body, was visible. Ryan's breath stopped. He was so large that the entire hall seemed small to him. His body was constantly changing. Sometimes it would take on a human form. Sometimes it would turn into smoke. Sometimes it would become a collection of hundreds of faces. And inside his body, thousands of people were screaming. All the people he had swallowed over the centuries. Suddenly Morgath's eyes fell on Ryan, and the whole world fell silent. Then Ryan felt something strange. He was trying to remember his name, but he couldn't remember it. He looked at Samuel in fear. "What is my name?" Samuel's face turned white. No. Morgath started laughing. "See, this is the beginning." Ryan tried to think with all his might. He remembered that he was someone. But who? He couldn't remember anything. At that moment, Samuel put the locket in his hand. "Even if you forget everything, don't let go of it. This is the last key." "What key?" But Samuel couldn't answer, because Morgath stretched out his giant arm and grabbed Samuel. "Samuel!" Ryan screamed, but it was too late. The black smoke emanating from Morgath's body surrounded Samuel. Samuel began to scream in pain. His body began to break, and light began to come out of him. A few moments before he died, he looked at Ryan, and he said for the last time, "Close the door. Only your blood can close it." The next moment, Samuel disappeared, as if he had never existed. Morgath raised his head triumphantly, and for the first time, his whole body began to enter the world of reality. The earth was exploding, the sky was turning black, and the walls of Oakwood Asylum were falling one by one. Ryan was left alone, and the most terrible thing was, he could no longer even remember his own name. He looked at the locket in his trembling hands. The locket opened. Inside it was an old picture. A child was standing in the picture, and below, it was a sentence. "The Last Guardian." Then another inscription appeared on the back of the picture. "If you can read this, then it's not all over yet." Oakwood Asylum was collapsing. The walls were falling. The ground was cracking. And dark clouds were swirling in the sky as if the whole world was caught in a terrible storm. But among them all, one person stood silently. Ryan. Or maybe he wasn't even Ryan anymore, because he had forgotten his name. He had forgotten his childhood. He had forgotten his mother's face. He had forgotten his sister's voice. He only remembered one thing, the locket in his hand, and a sentence written on it. The Last Guardian. Morgath was now completely free. His giant body was reaching for the sky. 1,000 faces were screaming inside him. 1,000 souls. 1,000 memories. All the people he had swallowed for centuries. Morgath's eyes focused on Ryan. "You've lost. You can't even remember yourself. Who's going to stop me now?" Ryan remained silent.
His mind was foggy.
But then, he opened the locket. The image inside suddenly began to flash, and a flood of memories flooded his mind. One memory, then another, then a third. He remembered his mother. He remembered his sister Emily. He remembered his childhood. He remembered his father. And then,
he remembered his name.
Ryan Walker. At that moment, a small piece of paper fell out from inside the locket. The paper read Jonathan Walker. If you're reading this, it means that Morgan is free. Remember, he doesn't get his strength from fear. He gets his strength from forgotten memories. Give people back their memories. He'll be weak. Ryan's heart beat faster. Now he understood everything. Morgath didn't kill people. He stole their identities. He ate their memories and lived off of that. At that moment, Ryan looked up at the sky and shouted with all his might, "You all remember who you are." At first, nothing happened. Then, a face inside Morgath's body opened its eyes. Then another. Then a third. And suddenly thousands of faces woke up at once. A woman shouted, "My name is Sarah." An old man shouted, "I'm Jackson." A child shouted, "I'm still alive." Suddenly, cracks began to appear in Morgath's body. He screamed in pain for the first time. No, don't let them remember. But it was too late. Thousands of people began to remember their own identities. And with each memory, Morgath was getting weaker. His body began to break. His voice began to crack. But then he made his final attack. One of his giant arms moved towards Ryan, so fast that it was impossible to escape. Ryan closed his eyes, and at that moment, he heard his father's voice.
Now.
The pendant began to shine rapidly. A storm of light shot out of Ryan's hand, and it hit Morgath's chest straight. The whole world was drowned in white light.
A moment.
2 moments, then silence. When Ryan opened his eyes, everything was over. Morgath was gone. Oakwood Asylum was gone. The ground was calm, and the sky was clear, as if nothing had happened. But the locket had cooled down now, and the image inside it was empty. Ryan knew the price had been paid. All those souls had been set free. His father too, Samuel too, everyone. 6 months later, Ryan wrote a book about the incident, File 13. But the surprising thing was that after the book was published, strange events began to occur. Many readers claimed that they had the same dream at night. A long dark corridor, a door at the end, with only one number written on it, 13. Ryan thought the news was just a coincidence. Until one night, when he was sitting alone in his house, he received an old envelope in the mail. There was no name on the envelope. He opened the envelope. Inside was just a picture, a black and white picture. And in the picture, Oakwood Asylum was there again. Even though it was destroyed, a shadow stood at the door of the picture, a black coat, and shining white eyes. Behind the picture was just one sentence. The door never closed completely, and at that moment, there was a knock on Ryan's apartment door. Knock, knock, knock. He slowly looked at the door, and the story ended. The end. Or maybe
Not yet.